is Nicolás Maduro. 3 days ago, the leader of Venezuela. And in front of him, Cilia Flores.
November 23rd, 1962. A baby boy is born in Caracas, Venezuela. His name, Nicolás Maduro Moros, the only son among 4 children. His father, Nicolás Maduro Garcia, a prominent union leader, a militant dreamer. His mother, Teresa de Jesus Moros, born across the border in Cúcuta, Colombia. They lived on Calle 14 in Los Jardines, El Valle, a working-class neighborhood on the western outskirts of Caracas. Not wealthy, not connected, just another family trying to survive in a Venezuela that would later be destroyed by this very child.
New images of the daring U.S. military raid to capture and extract Nicolás Maduro and his wife.
Young Nicolás attended Liceo José Ábalos, a public high school. His first taste of politics came through the student union, already learning to organize, to build networks. But according to official school records, he never actually graduated. No diploma, no credentials, just ambition and ideology. At 24 years old in 1986, Maduro did something that would change his life forever. He traveled to Cuba. The Socialist League sent him to the Escuela Nacional de Cuatros Julio Antonio Mella, a political training center run by Cuba's Union of Young Communists. 1 full year of ideological instruction, communist theory, revolutionary tactics, how to organize, how to agitate, how to seize power. This was Maduro's only formal education after dropping out of high school. No university degree, no economics training, no democratic governance studies. Just 1 year in a Cuban indoctrination facility. Who trained him? Pedro Miret Prieto, one of Fidel Castro's most trusted advisors. A senior member of the Politburo of the Communist Party of Cuba, a man who had been with Castro since the Sierra Maestra Mountains, since the revolution's earliest days. Miret didn't teach political science. He taught revolution. Venezuelan intelligence agencies were watching. By the early 1990s, they had identified Maduro as a leftist radical with close ties to the Cuban government. They understood he was dangerous, but they had no idea what they were really looking at. They were watching the slow-motion birth of Venezuela's future dictator. When Maduro returned from Cuba in 1987, he needed work. He got a job as a bus driver for the Caracas metro system, route after route, day after day. But Maduro wasn't just driving buses, he was organizing. The Caracas Metro Company had explicitly banned unions, but Maduro founded one anyway, the SITRAMECA, an unofficial underground union. His first real act of defiance against authority. He became a union leader, fighting for workers' rights. On the surface, noble work. But Maduro was learning something more valuable. How to build power from the bottom up. How to identify loyal followers. How to create networks of obligation. How to use grievances to mobilize people. These weren't just union skills. These were revolutionary skills. February 4th, 1992, before dawn, a young army lieutenant colonel named Hugo Chávez leads a violent military coup attempt. Tanks roll through Caracas. Soldiers storm the palace. The coup fails. 14 people dead. Chávez is arrested. But before being taken to military prison, Chávez appears on national television, just a few minutes. He takes full responsibility and says 2 words that electrify the nation. Por ahora, for now. The revolution has failed for now. Not forever, just for now. It's a promise, a threat. Nicolás Maduro, the 29-year-old bus driver, was watching. And in that moment, he saw his entire future. This was the leader he'd been waiting for. This was the revolution he'd been trained for in Cuba. Maduro immediately joined the movement to free Chávez. And during those campaigns, he met someone who would become not just his partner, but his political co-conspirator, Celia Flores. Born in 1956, she'd become a lawyer specializing in labor and criminal defense. Smart, tough, politically savvy. Flores was providing legal assistance to the imprisoned officers. Maduro was on Chávez's security team. They fell in love with each other and with the shared dream of transforming Venezuela. Years later, Flores recalled that first meeting. She said, "During that struggle for Chávez's release, when a young man asked to speak, I just stared at him. I said, 'How intelligent.' That was Nicolás." March 26, 1994. After 2 years in prison, Chávez receives a presidential pardon. Maduro leaves his bus driver job for good. No more routes, no more punching a clock. He joins Chávez's movement full-time. December 6, 1998. Hugo Chávez wins the Venezuelan presidential election in a landslide. And riding that wave, Nicolás Maduro, age 36, is elected to the National Assembly. The bus driver has become a legislator. And then the promotions begin. 2005, President of the National Assembly. 2006, Minister of Foreign Affairs, a role he would hold for 6 years. 2012, Vice President. Here's a remarkable detail. As Foreign Minister, Maduro didn't speak any foreign languages fluently. Not English, not French, not Portuguese. But language skills didn't matter, because Maduro had absolute, unwavering loyalty. He never questioned Chávez, never challenged him. He was the perfect lieutenant. As Foreign Minister, Maduro built alliances with dictators: Cuba's Raúl Castro, Iran's Ahmadinejad, Zimbabwe's Mugabe. He represented Venezuela at the UN, where Chávez called President Bush the devil. 2012, Chávez names Maduro vice president. Everyone understands what this means. Chávez is dying of cancer. He needs to choose a successor. December 2012. Chávez makes a televised announcement. If anything happens to him, Nicolás Maduro should be president. This is the anointing. Chávez is commanding the Venezuelan people to follow Maduro, not Maria Corina Machado, who would win the Nobel Peace Prize, not brilliant economists, not anyone with charisma or vision. Maduro, the bus driver, the loyalist, the man who would never challenge Chávez's legacy, even if it meant destroying the country. March 5th, 2013. Hugo Chávez dies of cancer. He's 58. Venezuela explodes in grief, and into that vacuum steps Nicolás Maduro, calm and ready, assuming the presidency immediately. But there's a problem. Unlike Chávez's overwhelming victories, Maduro will have to actually win an election. Can the bus driver win on his own? April 14th, 2013. Just 5 weeks after Chávez's death, special presidential election. Maduro versus Henrique Capriles. Maduro has every advantage: state media, government resources, Chávez's endorsement repeated endlessly. The official result: Maduro 50.6%, Capriles 49.1%, a margin of just 1.5%, about 235,000 votes. The narrowest victory in Venezuelan history. But observers immediately smell fraud, evidence of irregularities. International monitors express serious concerns. The opposition demands a recount. Maduro refuses. From his very first day, his legitimacy is questioned. The message was clear. Nicolás Maduro was no Hugo Chávez. He barely scraped through despite having everything. He didn't have the charisma. He didn't have the popular touch. What he had was institutional control, and he was about to use it. Maduro inherited an economy dependent on oil revenue, over 95% of export earnings. When oil prices fell in 2014, the entire system started to collapse, and Maduro, who had no economic training, had no idea how to fix it. What followed was one of the worst economic catastrophes in modern history. First came the shortages: milk, eggs, medicine. People queued for hours just to buy flour. Supermarkets imposed rationing. Then came the hyperinflation. 2014, 62%. 2015, 121%. 2016, 254%. And then it went insane. 2017, 13,000% inflation. 2018, over 130,000%. Venezuela experienced inflation exceeding 1 million%. People started weighing cash instead of counting it. A cup of coffee could cost 10,000 bolivars one week and 100,000 the next. Savings evaporated. The middle class was destroyed. Mothers couldn't feed their babies. Hospitals ran out of antibiotics, painkillers, cancer drugs. People with treatable diseases died. Children suffered malnutrition in a country that should have been wealthy. Venezuelans started losing weight from starvation. The average person lost 20 pounds. They called it the Maduro diet. It wasn't a joke. It was a tragedy, and Maduro blamed everyone except himself. The United States was waging economic warfare. Opposition politicians were sabotaging, never his policies, never his responsibility. By 2019, over 7 million Venezuelans had fled, the largest refugee crisis in Latin American history. They walked to Colombia, to Brazil. They risked their lives crossing the Caribbean. They scattered worldwide, carrying stories of a nation destroyed. But while Venezuelans starved and fled, something remarkable was happening at the top. The Boligarchs, Bolivarian oligarchs, insiders with regime connections getting extraordinarily wealthy. In 2020, the FinCEN files found over $4.8 billion in suspicious transactions linked to Venezuela between 2009 and 2017. Public money, oil money, moving offshore through shell companies into tax havens, vanishing. One name kept appearing: Alex Saab, a Colombian businessman with access to Maduro's inner circle. No-bid contracts worth hundreds of millions. And according to U.S. investigators, he was at the center of one of the most cynical corruption schemes in history. The scheme involved Venezuela's CLAP program, government food boxes keeping people alive. In July 2019, the U.S. Treasury announced sanctions against Saab, alleging he exploited the program and bribed Maduro's stepsons to secure no-bid contracts. Treasury claimed Saab looted hundreds of millions from a program meant to feed starving people. Think about that. People literally starving, and insiders allegedly stealing from the food program. This is how corruption works in a collapsing state. The people starve. The connected get rich. The dictator stays in power. As conditions deteriorated, Venezuelans did what people in democracies are supposed to do. They protested. They demanded change. Maduro's response would define his presidency. 2014. Student-led protests erupted. The protests started peacefully. Then Maduro deployed his forces, National Guard, police, and something new: the colectivos. Colectivos are armed pro-government gangs on motorcycles. Not official police, but they work with government blessing and weapons. They're paramilitaries. When protesters gathered, colectivos would attack, spreading terror. Police would stand aside and let it happen. By the time 2014 protests ended, at least 43 people were dead, hundreds injured, thousands arrested. But 2014 was just a preview. 2017 would be the year Venezuela truly bled. By 2017, inflation was approaching 700%. People eating from garbage. Medicine shortages meant treatable illnesses became death sentences. For months, protests consumed Venezuela. Massive demonstrations in every major city, barricades, fires burning, security forces responding with systematic, brutal violence. Over 120 people were killed. Human Rights Watch documented 88 cases involving at least 314 victims. Beatings, torture, arbitrary detention, security forces and colectivos working together. the UN Independent International Fact-Finding Mission urged accountability for extrajudicial executions, enforced disappearances, torture. The International Criminal Court opened an investigation, Venezuela 1, into possible crimes against humanity. But even as international condemnation mounted, Maduro faced a scandal that would become global news. The narco-nephews, November 10th, 2015. Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Two young Venezuelan men arrive at a restaurant. They're Efrain Campo and Francisco Flores, nephews of Celia Flores, Maduro's family through marriage. They think they're meeting Sinaloa cartel representatives to finalize a cocaine deal. 800 kilograms, multiple shipments, $20 million. But the cartel representatives are undercover DEA agents. Everything is being recorded. During meetings, the nephews explained they had access to Maduro's presidential hangar. They could move drugs under diplomatic cover. Venezuelan military would provide security. This was state-sponsored trafficking. The recordings captured something revealing. The nephews said they were at war with the United States. They weren't just smugglers. They saw themselves as revolutionaries. As they sat down for final negotiations, Haitian police and DEA agents swarmed. The nephews were arrested, put on a DEA plane to New York. Maduro's response? Outrage. Celia Flores called it kidnapping, but the evidence was overwhelming. November 18th, 2016, guilty on all counts. December 14th, 2017. 18 years each. Celia insisted it was all lies, but her nephews had confessed, on tape, multiple times. And here's the surreal part. October 2022. Biden agreed to a prisoner swap. The nephews were released and returned to Venezuela. What happened next? According to U.S. Treasury, they went right back to drug trafficking. Convicted traffickers released, back to the same crimes. By 2018, Maduro stopped pretending. He called an election, but banned the opposition. Maria Corina Machado? Banned. Capriles? Banned. Every serious candidate? Banned, imprisoned, or exiled. The opposition boycotted. Observers called it a sham. Maduro won easily. Over 50 countries refused to recognize him. They recognized Juan Guaido as legitimate president. For years, Venezuela had two presidents. Then came the U.S. indictment. March 2020. Maduro, Flores, and top officials charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy. The indictment alleged that for 25 years, they'd partnered with the FARC and cartels to flood America with cocaine. Let's understand what this alleged. This wasn't small-time dealing. According to prosecutors, Maduro allowed cocaine-fueled corruption to flourish. Starting as early as 1999, he allegedly partnered with Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, Los Zetas, the FARC, and Tren de Aragua. Between 2006 and 2008, when Maduro was foreign minister, prosecutors claim he sold Venezuelan diplomatic passports to traffickers. These passports allowed drug money to move from Mexico under diplomatic cover. The State Department estimated 250 tons of cocaine were trafficked through Venezuela annually by 2020, shipped from coastlines using go-fast vessels, fishing boats, container ships. Sometimes from airports controlled by corrupt officials. The U.S. offered $25 million for Maduro, later doubled to $50 million, the same bounty as bin Laden. The 2026 superseding indictment went further. It accused Celia Flores of accepting hundreds of thousands in bribes, arranging meetings between traffickers and officials. It alleged Maduro and Flores ordered kidnappings, beatings, and murders against people who owed drug money. This wasn't just corruption, this was organized crime at the presidential level. And then came 2024. One more election, one more theft. The opposition united behind Edmundo Gonzalez, with Maria Corina Machado as strategist. They organized thousands of volunteers, collected tally sheets from 85% of machines, digitized them, posted online. The result? Gonzalez 67%, Maduro 30%. It wasn't close. The people had spoken overwhelmingly. Hours after polls closed, Venezuela's Electoral Council announced Maduro won. No evidence, no tally sheets, just a declaration. The UN sent experts. The Carter Center sent observers. They all said the opposition's numbers were credible. The government's were not. But Maduro didn't care. He'd stolen the election in broad daylight. Protests erupted. Some toppled Chavez statues. Maduro unleashed full repression, over 2,000 arrested. Opposition leaders forced into diplomatic asylum. Human rights defenders detained. The world condemned him. But in January 2025, Maduro was sworn in for a third term, and Maria Corina Machado won the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. Maduro was ruling over ruins. 7 million fled. Economy destroyed. But he thought he was untouchable. Protected by his fortress, colectivos, Cuban intelligence, Russian support. He was wrong. January 20th, 2025. Trump inaugurated for his second term. Within days, he pushed Maduro to accept deportation flights. Then came the military buildup. Over 15,000 troops. The USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group off Venezuela. Then the strikes. Over 30 boats destroyed. More than 100 killed. Late December, a CIA drone strike. Maduro accused Trump of planning to steal oil. He mobilized military, put the country on alert, but he was preparing for the wrong attack. January 3rd, 2026. 2 a.m. Maduro sleeps in Fort Tiuna, protected by guards, surveillance, anti-aircraft batteries, Cuban bodyguards. He thinks he's safe. The sky erupts. Over 150 American aircraft strike simultaneously, air defenses destroyed, power grid shut down. MH-60 Black Hawks piloted by Night Stalkers descend. Inside, Delta Force. The same unit that got bin Laden's deputy, that captured Saddam, that killed al-Baghdadi. They've practiced on a full-size replica. They know exactly where he sleeps. Maduro wakes to explosions, tries to reach his panic room, but Delta Force breaches with overwhelming speed. Maduro can't close the steel door in time. According to Trump, he was trying to get to a safe place, but he got bum-rushed so fast that he didn't get into that room. Within minutes, Maduro and Flores are in custody. Flex cuffed, blindfolded. FBI reads them their rights, under arrest. A few American operators take wounds, but everyone walks away. No Americans killed. Perfect execution. Venezuelan casualties, at least 40 dead. By 4:20 a.m., just 2 hours and 20 minutes later, Maduro's on a helicopter leaving Venezuelan airspace. First stop, USS Iwo Jima, then Guantanamo, then New York. By Saturday evening, January 4th, 2026, Nicolás Maduro sits in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, the same jail that held El Chapo, the same jail that held Maxwell. And there's a photo. Maduro smiling as DEA agents escort him, smiling, as if he still doesn't understand it's over. Nicolás Maduro ruled Venezuela for 13 years. When he took power in 2013, the country had problems. When he was captured in 2026, it was destroyed. 7 million fled, nearly a quarter of the population. GDP collapsed by over 70%. Hyperinflation exceeded 1 million%. Thousands killed. 4.8 billion in suspicious transactions. 250 tons of cocaine trafficked annually. He claimed to be Chávez's heir, to protect the Bolivarian Revolution, to defend Venezuela from imperialism. But in reality, Maduro was a corrupt authoritarian who used ideology as cover for greed, violence as a tool for control, and loyalty as the only currency that mattered. He started as a bus driver in El Valle. He ended in a cell in Brooklyn, and between those 2 points, millions of lives were destroyed. Venezuela's story isn't over. Maduro's capture doesn't erase the damage, doesn't bring back the dead, doesn't feed the hungry, but it proves something. No fortress is impenetrable, no dictator is untouchable, and justice, however delayed, can still arrive. Even for a man who thought power, once seized, could never be lost. Nicolás Maduro learned otherwise on January 3, 2026. In a cell in Brooklyn, awaiting American justice, this is Daily Junkie, where we investigate the stories the world can't ignore.